So this person seems leads a meditation group also. When they'd finished meditation, a newcomer asked, what should I be thinking about? And so this question is, how would you answer that? So a lot of people, they say, what should I think about in meditation? Well, it depends. First of all, it depends on what kind of meditation you are practicing, because there are some forms of meditation that use topics that you think about. But there's other meditations that don't deliberately use thinking and use, focus on just the breathing process or the body, as a more of a concentration technique and learning how to let go of your thoughts and any other hindrances that come out. You try to notice them, let go of them, and then keep coming back to refocus or stay focused on your specific object of concentration, such as the breathing, which is one of the most common forms of developing concentration. So it would depend on what you are thinking about. But even with the concentration, the hindrances, dealing with the 5 hindrances are, the biggest impediment for meditation, especially for beginners, but even for intermediate practitioners. The 5 hindrances are all, potentially coming up. And just noticing them by itself and coming back to the breathing may not be enough to dissipate them. So sometimes you might reflect on a sensual desire. Let's say some sensual thoughts keep coming back to you over and over, and you're thinking about this person, or you're thinking about ill will, somebody that insulted you, and so it's hard to let go of those thoughts sometimes. So you have to sometimes apply the remedial sort of antidotes, such as seeing, ask yourself, why does this thought keep coming back to me? And seeing the dangers in harboring such types of thoughts. And know that, if you practice these thoughts and so on in your daily life, then, it's not easy to turn them off when you meditate. So, reflect on, even the practices of sila and so on, or not following silas are a cause for a lot of hindrances arising, or for drowsiness and so on. So sometimes you can kind of think to yourself about these hindrances, especially what are the causes and conditions for them, and if possible, apply an antidote. So if you're feeling sleepy, check your posture, straighten your posture back up. The spine is more straight. Take a few deep breaths. Maybe that will help you to stay more awake. So you can think about these things even while you're meditating, because if you don't, you wind up getting lost in the hindrances anyway, and your meditation won't improve. So we can use thoughts to remove thoughts, but you use wholesome thinking. You use thinking about the Dhamma to overcome just random, useless type of thoughts or the specific hindrances. So, therefore, some kind of thinking is, used in the meditation practice. But for beginners who are, trying to develop concentration, then then trying to at least count the breaths from 1 to 10, or just to use the mental notes of breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. Some kind of basic noting is a kind of thinking, but it's a very limited type of thinking that can help some people to help stay concentrated. Until you reach that level of where thoughts are not so prevalent and where the hindrances are not so strong, and you're able to start to feel those effects of the concentration in terms of being more alert and awake, less random thoughts, and so on. And then you can then begin practicing more the noting or the tuning into the flow of impermanence and so on. So, or if they're having trouble with the body, I mean, they can use the contemplation of the body. I mean, if they have a lot of thoughts anyway, for beginners, there's so many random thoughts come up, and it's very hard for them to control their thoughts. So if you have a Dhamma topic, like thinking about the body, what is this body comprised of? You can think about the four elements, or some other type of thinking, but you need some prior training in that. You have to have a clear idea of what you want to contemplate. But it's better in the beginning to try to develop the awareness of breathing to that point where the hindrances have been weakened to a certain extent, and where the thoughts have at least slowed down, and then your mind will be more clear, and you can use some thinking to, especially when you're practicing the four foundations of mindfulness, then that does use some bit of thinking, but that's already after you've quieted the mind a little bit and have reached some level of concentration. All right? So, like even the noting of just breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting, or in, sitting, out, sitting, as I often lead people through at the beginning of meditation. That's a kind of thinking, but it's a very limited thinking about noting the present moment. And so, those are skillful sort of techniques that we can use in the beginning. Okay, now another person had a question. It said, for them, it's easier to sit with my left leg on top of the right leg and the right hand on top of the left hand. Is there a problem to sit like this? Because he's been told many times before, I guess, by different people, that you should sit with the right leg on top of the left, but without much explanation as to why. Now, in some yoga or even in Zen meditation, some forms of meditation, the teachers might specifically tell you to put a specific leg or foot on top of the other one, or a specific hand on top of the other one. And this has to do maybe with very subtle ideas about the subtle energies that are circulating, and the prana nadis and so on, that are circulating within the body. And that by placing one leg on top of the other, or the hands insert, they think that it would be more conducive for gaining concentration. Now, whether that's true or not, only somebody with a very, very, very high level of awareness would be able to probably notice that. But myself, I mean, I've been sitting in the full lotus position for almost 40 years, and I tend to, I put my right leg on top of the left leg, so that seems to accord with what this person might have said. But sometimes I switch the position of the hand. Sometimes my left hand might be on top of the right one, sometimes my right hand might be on top of the left one, and I haven't really noticed much difference in that. Now, the reason why people might tend to put, the reason why I put my right leg on top of the left one is because people's bodies are not always perfectly symmetric, and it may be more difficult to put one foot on top of the other leg. So one position might be a little bit easier to do that. Now you could spend many months and months and months longer, kind of forcing a particular leg to go down or a knee to bend in the right position in order to sit in some exact position like that. So, I've just put my legs the way it just so happens to be what those other people may have recommended, but that may just be by coincidence, I don't know. But it's because, it enables me to sit longer. So, but in the long run, it doesn't matter that much about which of those positions. What matters is, how does it help you to keep the body sitting straight, to keep the spine in a proper alignment, to keep the head and the spine in a straight line. That's what I would say would be the more important criterion. And a person has to kind of experiment with that a little bit, or which position happens to be, I wouldn't say the most comfortable, because the ideal, you're never going to find the most comfortable position, but that's why practicing yoga exercises is good, because it helps to stretch the muscles, joints, and ligaments of the hips, knees, and ankles, which are the primary joints, and also strengthening the spine, which are the main parts of the sitting position. Now, another question this person had was about, sometimes after 30 minutes or so, my body becomes a little tense, especially when I hold my hands right on top of the left one, and I experience some kind of shivers running through my body, a kind of energy shower. I don't think there's anything spiritual about it. And sometimes tears drop from my eyes. Is this normal? Sometimes I think I'm not progressing through the practice because it's been like this for a while now, many months. Now, when you start to get deeper in the meditation, or you said after some 30 minutes or so, and so that's enough time for the body and mind to settle down. Because when you're sitting still for a longer period of time, the psychophysical energies and the brain activity gets less and less, and also the respiration slows down. And the amount of oxygen that you need to breathe in gets less, and so that creates a lot of changes in the nervous system, and also in the blood-brain chemistry balance too. And your awareness is getting more subtle. You're able to feel finer and subtler types of sensations. You'll also be able to notice subtler thoughts moving through the back of your mind and urges. But because of that more concentrated awareness, you're able to notice things more clearly than you would have when your mind is in a more gross state. So this idea of like shivers, that could be piti actually. That could be the onset of a jhana, for example, because when you start to gain concentration and you experience a piti, it can be felt like, the hair on your arms is standing up, or a kind of a thrilling little electrical current, going through the body, or many waves of sensation. So that could be what you're experiencing, and that's not a bad thing. But it could be a little bit shocking, or, the first time sometimes that it happens, and you might think, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, it's right. It's just that your awareness has gained a deeper level. These are basically the cellular and molecular or even atomic vibrations that are going on within the nervous system. I mean, our body is nothing but billions or trillions of cells, and they're constantly being born and dying and interacting. And this is producing like tremendous amount of energy vibrations throughout the body. But usually they're so subtle and our mind is coarse that we don't feel them really. But in deeper meditation, you can feel them. And people, especially people who've been practicing this Goenka system of scanning the body, that's a particular practice in which really tunes you into that. And they can feel the whole body is just a mass of changing vibrations. And actually, that's a deep insight. It's nothing to be feared about, but it could scare a person in the beginning. And then other things like tears coming out, these, meditation is a purification process. And sometimes you also might feel some shaking in the body or a lot of things happening in the mind, because this deeper concentration, it's revealing deeper and deeper repressed vibrations and so on that have been there for a long time. And meditation is a purification process. So it's pure, a lot of times like bouts of anger could come up. Wow, where'd this come from? Or fear. And these are repressed, deeply repressed mental memories that may be coming up. And so we observe them. We don't not to be afraid or push them away, but we try to feel them as they're coming up, feel what they're doing in the body, but try not to identify with them and saying, "Oh, that's me," or having a fear about them, or "I shouldn't have this." But you watch them in that caress of mindfulness, that embrace of detached mindfulness, and not feeding them with further fear, anxiety, or greed, and so on. And they kind of, work themselves out or burn themselves out and vanish, and it may leave you in a more relaxed state. So anyway, there's a lot of things. The amount of things that you can experience in meditation are virtually infinite. And for each person, they're going to be different. So if you talk to others about their meditation, they say, "Oh, this happened to me, and that happened to me." No, that didn't happen to me. Because every person has different background in terms of their karma and of their past experiences. And all these things are having subtle effects on our body and mind as we meditate. And especially as you gain deeper levels of awareness, deeper and deeper repressed things come up. Even for an anagami, they still have the 5 higher fetters of subtle conceit and pride or attachment to, subtle phenomena and so on. So that's how I would describe that. So it might think that you're not progressing because you're experiencing so many different things, but it could mean that you actually are progressing. And for some people, that process of purification of feeling these things can go on for a long time, even years. Especially if you're practicing the more or less the vipassana meditation, because in the vipassana meditation, that is, sort of the object or the process involved in developing this, insights and overcoming purifying the mind of greed, hatred, and delusion, as opposed to just to concentration. When you're just practicing one point of concentration, you kind of suppress all of those. You can suppress the pains and the thoughts and so on, and they just kind of stay buried in the unconscious mind. But when you come out of that meditation, then those kind of feelings and emotions can come back up because they haven't been observed, relaxed around, allow them to well up and to kind of work themselves out, but without clinging to them. And I've given talks about this in previous talks. Okay? So now, coming back to our sort of suggested topic for tonight, the verse. That verse is the one I often chant after meditation. Sabbe sankara anicchati yada panyaya pasati ata nibindati dukkhe yasamago visuddhya. So this means all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, or just wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, or to freedom. So I'm just going to give a little a summary of my interpretation of this, the meaning of this Pali verse. So sabbe sankara means all conditioned things. And all conditioned things belong to one of the 5 aggregates. So all the vibrations of material matter, for the 4 elements, or just all material matter, including these physical bodies, rocks, trees, planets, they're all comprised of the 4 elements of earth, fire, water, and air, or units of, atoms of materiality. So, as well as the mental aggregates of feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. So all those 5 aggregates, those are the conditioned things that are meant by sabbe sankara anicca. That means they're constantly changing, even at the subatomic level. Now, when we look at a rock, we don't see it constantly changing. But if you were to, tune into the, atomic structure of that and so on, you might see how they might be changing in very subtle ways. Or even our own body. You get up each morning, look in a mirror, you don't think you're changing too much, but over 6 months or a year, you might notice, things are changing. Of course, you get sick and diseases and other problems. So, things are changing. And everything around. So, but we tend to think we don't want certain things to change. Some things we like for it to change, but other things we don't want for it to change. We want to hold on and to have things the way we want them for longer and longer. But we know because of impermanence, they don't last. So when you deeply see impermanence, and this doesn't mean just, you knock a glass off the table, anicca, anicca, or you get sick, anicca, anicca. No, that's a very superficial meaning of impermanence. But in the Dhamma language, impermanence refers to the impermanence that's going on under the surface of things. So like the cellular and molecular and atomic nature of change that's going on all the time. Of course, this does refer to the superficial things we have too. But that external change is due to the internal changes that are going on under the surface that we don't normally see. So when we see this with wisdom, only when you see how things are changing with the eye of wisdom, that's why I tend to translate it as the eye of wisdom. This means with the vipassana insight. It means with the mindfulness and concentration developed to a high level, where now you're seeing things happening under the skin, so to speak, and you're seeing the subtler, more, moment to moment changes that are going through the nervous system. When you see that in its real nature, that's when your understanding about how clinging and attachment, does lead to suffering, and even attachment to things that we like. So when one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. It doesn't say becomes disenchanted with the material world. It says disenchanted with suffering. That means you become disenchanted with your own mind that's clinging on to things that are impermanent. So you become disenchanted with the various negative habits and other things that you've been cultivating your whole life. You become disenchanted with the ego that you even see, which is the deepest level of suffering. That's what we become disenchanted with. Not become disenchanted with a ham sandwich or, wanting to watch a movie or whatever. It becomes disenchanted with your own mind's clinging and the delusions that may still be there in their mind. Like some of these people who are believing in all these far out conspiracy theories, you're coming to realize that, they've been deluded and they become disenchanted with some of these theories that they've been believing in, but now, it's getting caught and then put in jail or prison or other things. So it means becoming disenchanted with your own mind and how it's become deluded and overly dependent on sensory stimulation and has lost that natural connection to the present moment, the vibration of present moment awareness, which is the state of freedom, when the mind is floating effortlessly from moment to moment, not getting caught and dragged into thoughts of the past and the future and struggling against things because you're identifying them as this is me and this is mine. That is what brings the suffering. You become disenchanted with that. And then you have to practice the Dhamma is for disentangling that tangle. I've given several talks recently about the inner tangle and the outer tangle. And we've allowed our mind to get so entangled with the external world. And that has caused our inner tangle of emotions and attachments and other things to become even tighter knots of that inside until, it brings people a lot of problems. Okay? So, so that one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. That means to purifying those elements in the mind that are causing these delusions and the attachments and aversions and the strong habits. And so it means following the Eightfold Path, really means following the Eightfold Path is that path of purification, which also includes the sila, changing certain aspects of your lifestyle and behaviors that keep you caught in these primarily negative habits and ways of speaking, eating, acting, or the entertainments that you do and friends that you hang out with. You learn to be more circumspect and to let go of those things that are keeping your mind around in circles like a cat chasing its tail. So anyway, this is the meaning of that stanza. Okay, so the important part is it's becoming, when you see impermanence with the eye of wisdom, you become disenchanted with suffering, not becoming disenchanted with the external world, with your own behaviors that keep the mind caught in the web of suffering. And the whole dependent origination is about addressing that. That's how the suffering has evolved, and that's how one can gradually reverse that process of entangling the mind deeper in the web of karmic interactions. This realization has not been lessened. How do I see this impermanence with the eye of wisdom? Well, because you haven't, you know nothing about the end condition. That means you have to keep meditating, and you have to gain enough concentration. That's why the eye of wisdom means having developed concentration to a high degree, and that mindfulness and concentration have been are balancing and supporting each other and becoming one kind of a powerful, like a laser beam of light that's able to pierce the veil of delusive thoughts, and especially the veil of the ego, and seeing how the ego is actually an illusion created within the mind. That is what you need to, until you have that experience, then you won't have the eye of wisdom, really. That is the eye of wisdom that penetrates that veil of the ego consciousness and experiences that liberation of the mind from subject-object identification, and therefore all the thoughts connected with the experiences that you've had. So it's really the practice of the Vipassana type of practice and following the four foundations of mindfulness that have you tune in to the body, the four elements, and see how they're constantly changing. And then the mindfulness of feelings and thoughts, see how quickly those are also constantly changing, and developing that detachment and identification to them. Instead of saying, oh, that's a pain in my knee, just saying, well, that's just the earth vibration. There's no, and letting go of it, and trying to see the body as just vibrations, or just as vibrations of molecules and atoms. But when you start saying, oh, that's a pain in my knee, then you're taking that personally. And then the ego is struggling against it. Oh, I don't want that. I don't want that. So that's how you have to examine, and you have to investigate how the mind is clinging and attached to the various feelings and thoughts and objects that are coming through our senses. Mm-hmm. And that can only be done by developing a high degree of mindfulness and concentration.
Bhante, you have a question?
Yes.
There are so many translations of the Dhammapada. How do you decide which book to rely upon as the better translation? And then the Nikayas are pretty easy because we have Bodhi, but the other books, there's so many different books, so many different translations, especially the Dhammapada. So I was just wondering,
well,
how do you decide?
Well, you're asking somebody that might give a biased answer.
It's okay.
Because I'm a monk, and I would say stick with monks' translations, and maybe not all of the monks. Lay people tend to give very liberal translations, like to spice it, flour it up a little bit, dilute it a bit, but the monks will normally attack it directly. Suffering, call it suffering, don't call it unsatisfactoriness. Call it what it is. And talk about the five aggregates, not just, all the little things, I'm sorry if I'm making some light of some of those translations, but I read some of them, and my favorite translations, and the ones that have helped me, are the translations, especially of Venerable Narada Thera, of Buddha Rakkhita Thera, and even Bhikkhu Bodhi translations, but stick with recognize the monks, and I think they give the most direct kind of translation. But I'll probably get criticized for saying that.
Thank you.
That's my opinion. So